Hi, and welcome to Mid-South Viewpoint. I'm Byron Tyler. Today, we're going to visit with a young lady who has had an eventful experience in life already. And it's something I believe that's possibly changed her life, and I'm hoping that we'll put some insight into your life and the life of homeless people. We're going to talk about it on our program with Tori Long. Tori, hi, and welcome to our program.
Thank you.
Your mom is a friend of mine. Your mom, Carolyn. Matter of fact, Carolyn's in the studio, too. Carolyn, I want to say hi to you.
Hi, Byron.
First of all, tell me about Tori and tell me about your relationship with her as mom and daughter. Talk about your life together.
Tori has always been pretty much an easy child. She's really smart, so she kind of skates by on that. And recently, things had gotten a little bit hard, and she had gotten pretty sick, and we started going to a service called Fire Starters, and I had been going, and she asked if she could go with me, really because she was really sick.
No, you told me to go. I didn't want to go.
Because she was really sick. And so I asked her, she'd been sick for about 18 months. She'd been losing a lot of hair and other stuff that she probably just doesn't want to talk about on the air. And so when they had a service in May of April of
27th.
Oh, there you go, on April 27th, 2012. And at that service, Tori really experienced healing on a physical level, but more importantly, on a heart level and a soul level. And when that happened, God just really took over in a way that I don't think she could have ever possibly fathomed, and in a way that was beyond my wildest imagination. And I'm just really grateful for the people that were there that could look into her and see beyond, or the need beyond physical healing, that what she needed was a soul healing. And so when I asked her, we are very, very close. And so she went along with me, and really the past year and 2 months is as history, as they say. And the adventure that she began with God on that April 27th, 2012, led to why we're here and the adventure that she's been on since September of 2012. So her obedience level, she is such an inspiration to me to watch her love of the Lord lead her to complete and total obedience that is abandoned. There's a lot of people that say they love the Lord and will do what he says, but the proof really isn't there. And I'm speaking of myself as well. She's quite an inspiration. I know that there's a lot of times when I tell people that they should read the blog that we're going to talk about, Love Works America Tour. And I think that they think that I'm saying that just because she's my daughter, but it's because as a believer, I've been challenged time and time again by reading her blog. So I don't know if I answered the question. I probably jumped way ahead, as I'm prone to do.
No, you really didn't, Carolyn. I really appreciate you positioning your thoughts like you just did. I just heard John MacArthur say the other day that really responsibility of parents, oftentimes we have these goals for our kids to be successful, to know that they're going to have a good job, have the right education, have a good family life, and all these things that we want as parents, for our kids. MacArthur said our really sole goal and responsibility is to see that our kids have a relationship with Jesus Christ, and that they are walking in that relationship, in faith and trusting him. And that is really our sole purpose. And when we accomplish that, we have reached our goal as parents. That really is foundational for us as followers of Jesus.
Right. And what you'll find as you talk to Tori is I thought that she was on a faith walk that was completely opposite. And that's why our relationship, over the past year, she has said things to me about where she was in her high school years that I had no idea where she was, because she's such an easy child. She's extremely intelligent, which led to her getting lots of scholarships to go to ETSU. She scored a 29 on her ACT. She she's an academic scholar. So what I realized is after she came to the Lord, and she's told me, been really honest with me as a sister in Christ, as a daughter, as a friend. She's been really honest with me about where she was before April 27th, 2012. And I had no idea. And I wouldn't for anything edit where she was, even though I had no idea where that was before she met the Lord.
Yeah, as a parent, there are places we never want our children to walk down. And sometimes they're secretly, doing those things that we don't know about. And they do that, I think, to protect us, and they don't want to break our hearts. And it's going to break our hearts when we find out, we know. But, sometimes it is during those experiences of life that and God gets a hold of our kids. And,
Yep.
and it really has to be where they're walking with the Lord. Is that right, Tori?
Yeah.
Talk about that for you. I mean, when you described to your mom some of the things that you didn't really want to talk to her about.
Well, in high school, I was raised in church, but starting in the beginning of high school and kind of I guess even the end of junior high, I kind of just started being more apathetic, I guess. In the beginning of high school, I would kind of try to get into the God thing every once in a while, but it never really lasted long because it was kind of just me trying to not do bad things, and then I was just like, well, those bad things are fun, so I'll keep doing them. And then during halfway through or even later on, I got more than apathetic. I kind of was annoyed at the whole God thing because I went to a Christian school, and you were always hearing about it and going to chapel and all that stuff. And so even just hearing about God, I was like, oh, stop it. Leave me alone. And I wasn't ever a big, huge partier, but I mean, I drank some and I smoked weed some. I wanted to be free, and I didn't really, then I thought I was free, but I didn't really know what true freedom was then. So.
And this sickness or the illness that Mom was talking about, did that come along soon after that?
Yeah, I started dabbling in the no good things in freshman year. But I started getting really sick junior year, and then towards the end of my junior year, it's kind of awkward. Do you want me to say it anyway?
Describe your sickness, yeah.
Okay. I was on my period every day for a year, starting, I guess, towards the end of my junior year, and that lasted through my senior year until I went to that Fire Starters, the meeting, and they prayed for me. And after they prayed for me, I bled for 3 more days, and ever since then, I've been normal.
Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So you experienced a physical healing from the Lord.
Yeah.
After prayer. But that also was kind of a wake-up call for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, when I went to that, I've been in church my whole life, but there's kind of a whole other Christian world that a lot of people, it's this whole other part of God that a lot of people don't ever get to see. And so I was seeing the people worship in a way I'd never seen before, and I was just oh my gosh, that is true freedom. It's what I always wanted was just freedom. And when I saw that, I knew that that's what freedom really looked like. And so I was like, I want this. And I've been all in since.
Carolyn, isn't that interesting? Because we, as created by God, were created for one thing, that was to worship Him. And the very thing that we were created to do seems to be the thing we always run from, Try to find other things in life to fill that I don't know what it is we're trying to fill, because He's the one that really satisfies. But when it comes to that worship and being devoted toward Him, being just totally surrendered and sold out to Him, and hearing His voice, walking in His way, that is what, as Tori described, that she experienced something that she had never experienced before, because that's really where freedom is.
Right. What she saw at Fire Starters were people that were totally free in worship. One of the things, it's funny because you ask what she's been doing this week, and she's been house sitting at a girl named Sarah's house who is a painter, and she at that service, she was painting while the service was going on, and Tori is artistic, so she got to see that, but she also saw Sarah painting, and then when Sarah was like when worship would get really intimate, Sarah would leave that canvas and she would just worship. And to Tori, again, it was that freedom. And so she saw freedom with brand new eyes. And like she said, she has been all in ever since. And Tori was one where she's been in church all her life. I've been a worship leader all of her life. And so I've become more and more free in my worship every Sunday. And Alistair Begg, who you guys play on your service, actually had a huge part to do with my giving my all in worship. But there are so many times when I hear people say, I desire to worship all out. I desire to give my all. I desire to lift my arms and to really give it all. And I just can't seem to get past. It's like there's a wall. And I try to encourage them and let them know that all it takes is one step forward and you will never go back. If you give your all in worship once, you will never turn around and go back to the way you used to worship. But there's a huge stipulation. There's a huge stipulation. Like here's what I really believe. More than what the person next to you will think of your worship, I think that when you give your all to God in worship, there's a degree of brokenness that you're going to experience, that people are more afraid of that than they are of the person next to them, their response. When Tori was at that meeting, she had brokenness in her worship, and some of that was just from the beauty of the freedom of the other worshipers. Am I correct?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't really worshiping at that point. I kind of just sat down and cried. Because, I don't know, I was like, even, like, a lot of times people go into worship experiences and it's like an emotional feeling. Like, I don't know. But for me, it was even more than emotional. It was, like, physical. I was like, what is going on in my heart? Because, like, I never really experienced Holy Spirit before that night. And that Holy Spirit changes everything.
Well, also, this was the beginning of a new course for you, too.
Yeah.
You had experienced the Lord's healing after such a long bout of this illness and praying and asking for deliverance and healing. But you started, some of your priorities kind of changed, too, didn't they?
Yeah.
And this was what began this journey, as your mom mentioned a moment ago, the Love Works American Tour. What was it that began this tour for you?
Well, my original plan was to go to East Tennessee State University this year. But 2 weeks before I was supposed to move into my dorm, I found out that wouldn't be possible, which is a long story of like losing scholarships because of circumstances that were out of my control. So at first, like I was with God at this point. And at first I was like, oh my gosh, I'm devastated. What good can come out of this? But then I remember it was a specific moment. I had driven out to talk to my mom about it, like what was I going to do, because schools were already starting and all that stuff. But she was really busy at work, so I started driving home and I was thinking about who I could call to talk to about this. And God was like, hello, I'm right here. And I was like, oh my gosh, God, like, what do you want me to do? And like that second that I lifted it up to him, he gave me this vision for what I've been doing this past year, which is just like driving around the country and feeding the homeless and loving on people and just sharing Jesus. So. And
you've been doing this by yourself?
Yes.
And are you 18 years old?
I'm 19 now.
You're 19.
I started when I was 18 though.
You were 18 when you started. You're 19 now. So for the past year, you have been traveling to big cities too. Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Chicago?
I stopped there, but I didn't really get to do much because I got sick. But
Atlanta?
Yes, I was in Atlanta.
D.C.? Mm-hmm. Okay. What are some other places you've been?
I went to New York, Orlando, San Francisco, Phoenix, Fresno, Las Vegas. Albuquerque, Denver, all over.
Texas, yeah.
And
Houston.
What was the original thought behind going to these different cities?
At first, it was kind of open to whatever. Like, I just wanted to serve wherever the city needed. But I kind of knew the whole time, like, I planned on making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and going out and finding homeless people. And originally I was thinking I was going to volunteer a lot. And at first I did. Like, I volunteered a lot through the journey. But it turned out that I usually just went out on my own, because a lot of places that you volunteer, you don't really get to interact a lot. You kind of just put food on a plate, and that's what I love to do, was to get to talk to people and interact with them. So I got to do that the most when I went out and found them in their environment. So
talk about some of the lives you crossed paths with.
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I feel like there's like one or two people that stand out from each city. Do you want a sad story or a happy story?
Let's have one of both.
Okay, I'll start with a sad one so we can have a happy ending. When I was in Kansas City, this was definitely one of the hardest things. I was driving around downtown and I saw this guy with like plastic bags on his feet. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to stop and help this guy. So I pulled over, and I was asking him what size shoe he wore and like how I could help him. And he couldn't really talk very well. I don't know if that was because of mental or like drugs or what. But eventually, like, I got him to write out his shoe size and like what kind of shoes he wanted, because I had looked through my car and I didn't have any shoes in his size, so I was going to go buy some. And so he wrote down his shoe size and what he wanted, and he said black boots or tennis shoes. Or no, it said black tennis shoes or boots. And I was like, okay, I'll be right back. Just stay here and I'll go get you some shoes. So I went to the shoe store. This is actually kind of funny part. I went to the shoe store and I got some black tennis shoes that looked like durable but not ugly. So I brought them back and I gave them to him. And he kind of just looked at them and didn't really respond. And I was like, well, that's kind of weird. Like, I don't know, you just expect some kind of response. And so he didn't really respond. I was like, okay, have a good day. And I kind of started walking away. And then he got my attention. He was like, can you return these? Like, he didn't speak very clearly, but I got out of him, could you return these? And I was like, yeah, do they not fit? And he was like, I want boots. I was like, why would you write down tennis shoes if you just wanted boots? I was like, okay, whatever, I'll be back, stay here. So I went and I got him some boots. And then I came back and gave them to him. And he still kind of wasn't really responding and he put them in his backpack, and I was like, do you want to try them on in case they're the wrong size and I can go return them again? And he was like, no. And it was just kind of weird. And so I was like, okay, well, have a good day and stuff. And so I started walking back to my car, and like when I got in my car, I just started bawling, because it was so sad to me that this man was walking around without like good shoes, and he's walking all the time, and he has plastic bags on his feet, and how many people walk past him in a day, and like nobody had ever thought to like give this guy some shoes. And then also he wouldn't tell me his name, and that was just really sad to me. Like whether it was trust or just I don't know, like he wouldn't tell me his name, and the fact that he could hardly talk. And he was just a really sad guy, and it just broke my heart. So I was sitting there in my car bawling, and then he comes up and knocks on my window, and I was like, oh my gosh, and I tried to wipe my tears away really fast, and I rolled down my window. I was like, yeah. And he was like, can you help me out and give me some money for a bus ticket? And I was like, sure. And so I was looking through my bag, and I pulled out 4 quarters first. He needed $1.25. So I pulled out 4 quarters, and then I found a $1 bill later. And as I was looking for the money, I asked him why he needed. Oh, he said he needed a bus ticket to get to the hospital. So I was like, what's wrong? Like, why do you need to go to the hospital? And his feet were so bad that he had to go to the hospital in order to even change his shoes out, and that's why he was being so weird about it earlier. So that just broke my heart too. And So I gave him 4 quarters, and then I found a $1 bill, so I gave him that. And, like, he gave me the change back, and I was like, no, you can keep it. And he, like, refused to keep, like, 50 extra cents. And that was just crazy. I'm like, how? Like, most people will take whatever you give them and then ask for more, but he only wanted the bare minimum. And it was just, it broke my heart.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was a sad day. And it was really hard to go out the next day. I was like, I can't handle this.
We know, Tori, you said something there I want to kind of hone in on a little bit when you mentioned that you passed people by, or how many people passed him by every day and just never stopped to ask, hey, can I get you a pair of shoes, or can I do something to help you out?
Yeah.
You know, we see on the side of the roads homeless people in our city, you know, or we pass people sometimes. They don't really have to be homeless necessarily, you know. Mm-hmm. It might just be, it could be a coworker at our jobs, and maybe they're coming to work every day with, you know, depression or, you know, a pain and just taking time to reach out to somebody that's hurting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We get so busy with our own thing, to realize that, hey, maybe I should stop and listen and help somebody.
Yeah.
Oh, how did you finance this mission?
Oh, it was a mix of, I was always a saver, so I had a lot of money saved up through high school. So it was a mix of that and just people that knew what I was doing donated. And all, like, my peanut butter and jelly was donated. All the socks or clothes or anything I gave out was donated. So, yeah, it was a mixture.
And so when you would go to these cities, where would you stay?
I stayed with friends of friends. Usually my mom would make a Facebook of where I was going to be, and then one of her friends would be like, hey, I know somebody who lives there, and I'd stay with them.
Okay, let's go back to Mom now. While Tori is in these different cities and meeting, individuals, Mom, just like she just described here, how were you holding up? What were you doing? I mean, I know there had been some times of concern for you as a mom, sure.
There are a lot of people that don't understand how I could let my 18-year-old get in her vehicle and drive thousands of miles across the city, hang out on Skid Row in L.A., and what they don't understand is I knew that this was, to go back in time, my heart song is Experiencing God, and I've facilitated that probably 15 to 20 times. I always thought it was because it was my heart song and because I told God, whenever you want me to lead this, I'll do it. I'll never say no. Well, little did I know that, we're kind of arrogant in our little human flesh, that God was actually putting me into all of those Experiencing God positions of facilitation because he wanted to embed deeply upon my heart that God is always at work around me and that we don't have the right to say no, Lord. So when he put that on her heart to go feed the homeless around the nation, I knew that wasn't a Tori Long adventure. I knew she was called to do something bigger and better, capital B, better. And I remember in that study, it's saying, the world is yet to see what God can do through a heart that is completely and totally yielded to him. And I saw this child being completely and totally yielded, and I knew that I could not stand in the middle of God's activity. I knew that if she was going to say yes, it was not my responsibility, and nor should I dare say no to her. So from the moment she left, she went. Now, of course, when she would call, I had to constantly keep my heart in check because I'll never forget, she left for her very first trip to go to Nashville. She started in Nashville, and she was on the road for probably an hour, and she called. And already I was like, and she was going nowhere. She was going to Nashville, and it was an hour of her travel. So I'm like, are you okay? And she goes, I got stopped. I said, you what? She said, I got stopped. And Tori was 18. She'd been driving for 2 years and had never received a ticket. And I was like, really? She goes, yes, and the officer would like to speak to you. I was going too slow. so I was laughing. And, Tori gets her first, stopped by a police officer for going too slow. She did get one more ticket
for going too fast
along Love Works America
kind of balance
tour.
It out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. But we also, like, in people's prayer for her, they were very adamant about realizing, and people that saw, there was one lady that said that she saw like a 10-foot angel on either side of Tori. I knew that she was greatly protected. I knew that God didn't call her into something for destruction. He called it in for his calling and for his good and for his glory, and she was being obedient, and I knew God would honor her obedience. So I really didn't fret. On the other side, I remember very clearly getting the phone call when Tori was in Kansas City the next day after she met that man with the bags on his feet. And I was very concerned because I could hear the brokenness in her voice not when she told me the story, when she answered the phone. And she's like, and when she would tell me, I just don't think I'm going to go out today. And I was like, Tori, what's going on? And of course, in my mother's mind, I'm thinking the worst. I'm thinking that somebody has done harm to my child, but she's still walking in obedience. That was my fear. And then she called me back, and I took my phone and I went outside. I went out of my office and sat in the rocking chair because I work in a really cool environment. So I sat on the front patio in a rocking chair, and I listened to her tell the story. And when she got to the point where she said, and then he knocked on the window, I was very fearful of that time for her. And then just to hear her love, to say that she was broken, and to hear her love, I think you can even hear it when she was telling it, for that man that remains nameless. And Tori loves to know the names of the people that she's loving on. It's part of the process. She doesn't want to hand somebody a sandwich and pass on. She's loved getting to know them. She calls them her friends. They are not by any means the least of these in her eyes or in God's eyes. Yeah. And so I really did not struggle with fear. I was very confident. There were times on the other end, like when I knew she was safe and I was on the phone, and God gave me words to encourage her, you need to go back out, Tori. You need to go back out. Even if you don't get out of your car, it's important right now that you put one foot in front of the other, and you pack your sandwiches up and you go in your car and you see where the Lord leads you. And she did that, and he was very faithful that next day, very faithful to her.
Tori, Mom was talking about, having moments maybe where she was afraid for you and feared for, your safety. Did you ever have fear at all?
No, not at all. There's so many things that God has done in my heart that I don't even understand, like the fact that I wasn't afraid ever on this trip, like hanging out on Skid Row and no fear. But I guess it's like what my mom said, like I knew God called me to do this, and I knew that he would protect me through it. So I was just like, oh, no fear. It's not scary.
But it was something that you really saw God and show up in some unbelievable ways.
Yeah, it's just been crazy. And he's taught me so much. Like, even this kind of from the outside looks like it's all about homeless people, but there's so much more than that. And it was really just God taking me out into the wilderness, I guess, and just letting me get to know him better, even aside from all the homeless people, which that I loved that, but there was so much more to it than that.
Would you continue conversation with us and do a second program? Because I don't think we can get it all in. I think we need to share some more. And if we could go ahead and just say goodbye on this program to everybody, let's let folks know how they can find your blog.
Oh, yeah. It's loveworksamericatour.blogspot.com.
Okay, give us one more time.
loveworksamericatour.blogspot.com.
Okay, well, on that, we're going to say goodbye on this program, but pick it up next time if we can and continue our conversation. Is that okay with you, Mom?
Sounds great to
me. All right.
Carolyn
and Tori Long, our guests today on Mid-South Viewpoint. Friend, I hope you've enjoyed our conversation. Not just enjoyed, but have been challenged, maybe been encouraged, maybe something that God is calling you to step out on faith and do for him, for kingdom work. I hope this program has maybe encouraged you to do just that. We're going to pick it up next time on our program. That's all the time we have right now. I'm Byron Tyler. We'll talk to you then. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.